Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Best and Worst of Walt Disney World. I'm your host, Pete Werner, joined at the table this week by my partner in crime, Mr. Steve Porter.
Hello.
And back in the production nook by our producer, Mr. Craig Williams.
Hello.
Who's very dark and
Gloomy
looking.
It's a rainy day in Florida.
Wow, okay. So, kind of keeping in the trend that we started doing last month, we've been putting polls on the Diz Unplugged and Diz Facebook pages, asking certain questions and then reporting the answers to you. So rather than necessarily just giving you our opinions about what we think is the best and worst, which we will do with certain shows and at certain times, but we also thought it was a good idea to find out what you thought the best and worst of certain things might be. So in this episode today, we're going to talk about the best and worst quick service restaurants at the Magic Kingdom. We've been asked a lot about doing these. We've talked about table service restaurants and things like that. And since I've eaten at all of these places at one time or another, but I tend to do the table service more. So especially for this, I thought the audience would be a much better judge of best and worst than I would be. Steve, I think you might be a little more in touch with some of these things.
Yeah, I'm in touch a little bit. With park days and stuff like that, we're always in there. So I'm actually looking forward to see what people said, so I can maybe on my next park day take their advice.
Yep, I think that's a good idea. All right, so we'll start out with the best.
All right.
I've taken the best, the top three and the bottom three from our survey, and we had just about 1,000 people respond, so we got a really good sample on this. But people were able to vote for more than one restaurant. So if these totals don't add up to 100%, that's why. So the number three best quick service restaurant at the Magic Kingdom, according to you, or those of you who voted, Pecos Bills, with just about 41%.
This doesn't surprise.
Not at all. I actually thought it might be higher.
I would too. The only thing I can say is it is, of all the quick service locations, it is one of the pricier ones. Stuff like
but it's good.
It's well worth it. It's well worth it. But that I'm just trying to rationalize what.
Right, and portion sizes are also really good.
Really good. With the toppings bar, you can add a ton of food. So.
Exactly.
It's easy to see why this is one of the top ones.
So that comes in at number three. Now, a stronger, and it was actually pretty close between number two and number one, the Columbia Harbor House. This is a perpetual fan favorite. I don't know that I understand the appeal.
I do.
What is it?
I love just the food. I like the food there. And I, more than anything else, I like sitting. It's so weird, but I mention it multiple times on the show and on different best and worst. I love sitting on the second floor. It's one of the very few quiet places to sit.
Yep.
You can find, it's not as crowded as some place like Cosmic Rays or any of the other places where you're kind of all cramped in next to each other. You have a nice large table. And I prefer the menu, and it seems like other people do too. So,
do you think that theming is part of the appeal?
I think so. I think it's one of those more traditional Disney themings where it's not overly intellectual property, like maybe the next one that we'll mention is. So it's a little bit more classic Disney, and for some that might be what people like about it.
Right. Plus that that Americana, that colonial American theme. I think there's a lot of resonance in that. Like the food. Yeah, it's okay. I've never found the food there to be outstanding. Not like I do at Pecos Bills. I think Pecos Bills is fantastic. Number one confuses the hell out of me, folks. It confuses the hell out of me. But, Columbia Harbor House, by the way, 53% of you rated that the number two restaurant at number two quick service restaurant at Magic Kingdom. Number one, I guess it just confuses me. Be Our Guest. Now we're talking quick service here. We're not talking table service. We're talking quick service. 54.7%, almost 55% of you rated Be Our Guest. And this has got to be for the theming because it sure as hell is not for the food. The quick service food that I've had more than a few quick service meals there, and they were all anywhere from average to awful and ridiculously overpriced. So this has got to be a theming thing.
Yeah, it's probably theming, and it's a lot of probably people voting for it because it's been their only opportunity to get in there. Maybe they haven't had the opportunity to get the reservation that they wanted, so they kind of settle for this, and I don't know.
Well, if I'm going to throw my opinion in here, which I'm always going to do, I'm going to say that if you're not familiar with any of these places, if you get in to be our guest, great, but manage your expectations because the food isn't very good. And it's ridiculously overpriced. Where my recommendation would be Pico's Bills first, then Columbia Harbor House.
Mine would be just the reverse, but still right up there.
So those be our guest restaurant with 55% of the vote. Number 1, quick service restaurant, according to you, at the Magic Kingdom. Now let's turn our attention to the worst. And no real surprises. Well, no real surprises. Number 3, getting only 3.3% of the vote. Tomorrowland Terrace. Again, not surprised by that.
I'm not super surprised. I also think, to be fair to the Tomorrowland Terrace, it doesn't get there might be people that have never had the opportunity to eat there because it is seasonal, so it's not always open.
Yeah.
So part of that might be that they didn't vote for it because they've never had the opportunity.
Well, even when it is open, I haven't found it to be.
Yeah, it's certainly not exceptional.
It's not exceptional at all. Number 2 does not enjoy that caveat. With 2.4% of the vote, the lunching pad.
This is hot dogs and ices, and it's basically like, I don't know. Saying it's like ballpark food is being mean to ballpark food.
Yeah, it's insulting to ballpark food, yeah. But, it's also centrally located. It's easy. We need something quick. I've done it before. I've made the mistake of getting a hot dog there. And I say the mistake because I think I can still taste it from like a year ago. So if you're going to eat any of the stuff that's there, I mean, if you want an icy or something like that, that's fine. But you're going to eat any of that stuff, make sure you have like a Pepsid or some Tums or Alka-Seltzer, or just throw it up when you're done because, I think it tastes better coming out. But wow, that's really mean. That's really mean. That's unfair. That's unfairly mean. But the lunching pad coming in at number 2. Number 1, why do you think this is, Steve? The Golden Oak Outpost, 1.5% of the vote.
I think this is it's kind of like a rotated, it used to be, they used to have like tater tots that had like stuff on them, and now I think it's like just chicken nuggets. I think it's just constantly rotating, so people are voting. They're not really sure what they're voting for because it seems like there's always every couple of years there's something new in there.
Right. This used to be a McDonald's location.
It used to.
And then it was extremely popular because you could get McDonald's French fries in the park, and they were really good.
So that would be great if they could ever have that again, but I doubt it. But I just think that this place, people didn't vote for it just on the fact of like, what's in there again? I don't really remember. So.
Right. I think your point's well taken. I think Disney coming up with some staple items that are served there that are fan favorites.
Yeah, that are consistent.
Would absolutely take some of the pressure off of some of the other quick service restaurants that tend to get a little too crowded. And B, probably get it off this list as the worst counter service location.
Because I've never had a particularly bad snack or little meal there. So maybe that's just my experience. But I think that
Well, we're talking 1 point. Do you think people just don't know it's there?
Could be that. Yeah, it could be that. What's the golden? Yeah, it could be that they just don't know what it is.
But 1.5%. That's pretty definitive.
Yeah.
Only out of 1,000 people.
Yeah.
It's
hard to excuse
1.5 of them.
Guess. Yeah. It's hard to excuse it, I guess. How many votes did it get?
I don't have the actual number of votes. I just put the percentages down here.
Gotcha.
So yeah, there you have it. Top 3 quick service locations at Disney's Magic Kingdom: Pico's Bills, Columbia Harbor House, and the number 1 Be Our Guest restaurant. And the bottom 3, the worst 3 quick service restaurants at Walt Disney World or at Magic Kingdom: number 3, Tomorrowland Terrace; number 2, the Lunching Pad; and number 1, the Golden Oak Outpost. So there you have it. That'll do it for this episode of the Best and Worst of Walt Disney World. Join us again next week. Have a great week, everyone.